Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hi, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 163 of the Cognitive Podcast. Happy New Year! I'm recording this on January 1st, 2024, as we enter that delightful time of trying to figure out when next year's holiday vacation will fall and how many hours we have off and how many times we're going to mess up writing the year accurately. In the meantime, I hope everybody had a great Hogmanay, that is New Year's Eve, for those of us who are residents of Scotland or wish we were. And right now, of course, I'm in Southern California in the rather balmy 50-degree weather, so maybe I shouldn't complain. Your comments are very welcome. Please feel free to comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. Don't forget that K in cognitive. Or you can comment on the thread on our group on Ravelry, because I do one for every episode. In the meantime, let's roll on to the warm thanks, shall we? Well, first off, I'm completely over COVID as far as I can tell. I really do need to resume my exercise schedule. I'm happy to say I'm working on exercise, as you may remember, and I'm also working on a savings plan. The savings plan has held up brilliantly, and I'm really quite enjoying it. The exercise, I'm getting back to it. I had a heck of an enormous case of fatigue during COVID, and it may have been COVID or it may have been the medication, but whatever it is, I'm sure glad it's over. Because a week ago this time, I could barely get out of a chair. Actually, a week ago today was the first day I tested negative, was Christmas. It was a nice Christmas present. In the meantime, this was the Warm Thanks Department, so let me thank you all. Thank you to all the kind people who sent supportive messages while I was going through the COVID blitz. And let me tell you, number one, glad I'd already had the shot, although I'm not sure if I had the updated shot. I got it just at the time they were introducing the updated one. And that may have made a difference. And number two, yes, Paxlovid really works. Works amazingly. I also want to thank Sustainable Living, who showed us a picture in the show notes on episode 161 over on Ravelry. She showed us a picture of her incredibly beautiful Romeo sweater. I love that someone else is picking up this, shall we say, annual event with me. I'm in love with my Romeo sweater. I did not work on it a lot, but I'm really going at it apace and very pleased with where it's going. And Sustainable Living's just leaves me in the shade. Her color work is gorgeous. So go over to the show notes on Ravelry for 161 and have a look at her picture. It's really nice. I also want to thank Steffi Joe for a very informed and thoughtful response around the issue of AI replacing humans as therapy providers. I say this because my own dear Steffi Joe said pretty much what I would want anybody to say, which is, are they out of their minds? You can't replace a human with a machine. And the common sense response there is, yeah, what person says, I feel just terrible, maybe I'll kill myself, and goes, I know what I want, I'll talk to a computer. That'll give me a warm and fuzzy response. And I think that's the common sense way for any normal person to look at it. Although I have to say, as someone who does physiology and kind of tries to follow it as much as I can, I have to tell you that I do believe there are real biological, physiological, and biochemical responses to having another human in the room with you being supportive. The issue is, can we do that on the internet? The answer is, if the person is high enough functioning, yes. So I would say that Steffi Joe's response is a nice response from somebody more on the tech side, and she's having a very intelligent response. Why would any patient want this? Thank you so much. I can't tell you. And on my side, I'm having this sort of, I'm in a nightmare horror movie response of, does anybody care about physiology here? Also, I wanted to thank Steffi Jo because she has added books to our collection of books worth reading or listening to. There is a link in the show notes to the Ravelry page where we are collecting those. So if you have books you want to recommend, by all means, go over to that page and add some books. I also wanted to thank our own beautiful Christina for her lovely holiday card. I'm bragging. I'm just going to be honest here. I just got it today and sat down and opened it up, and it's a beautiful family card with a Japanese temple in the background. How jealous am I? They just came back from Japan. Oh, I want to go to Japan so much. At any rate, I was all excited because, oh my gosh, I have a buddy in Australia who writes me. Oh my gosh, that's like the nicest thing. And then sends me Japanese scenery. I live in this state of perpetual wonder. This is probably partly due to being an American, because Americans, we have this huge country. And you will meet plenty of people in the United States who will say things to you like, I don't know why you need to travel. Everything you need is right here in America. Look at all the scenery, blah, blah, blah. And yes and no. Certainly inside of the American borders, you can find several different cultures. Ooh, some of which I find a little scary. Texas! But no, I know Texas is gorgeous, but their politics right now, please. At any rate, heading right back into the 16th century. At any rate, one of the things you get from travel is this exposure to other cultures, how other cultures solve the same problems that Americans have, and sometimes in your face what they think of the U.S. And it's very valuable information. The idea that you're going to stay in America and learn enough is a very dangerous idea, in my opinion. And at the same time, there's something so exciting about being surrounded by people from other places with other views. So it's very exciting. And then on top of it, she knows I have a thing about going to Kyoto. And well, anyway, beautiful family, Christina, absolutely gorgeous. Okay, having said that, the Cognitive Fiber Retreat, this will be number 10 in 2024. All the info is linked in the show notes, and it'll take you to the info thread on Ravelry. And that's all I really need to say about that till we get to the calendar. So instead, let's talk about what's on my hooks and needles, shall we? I am a mighty happy puppy because I finished the Superstition sweater. You can see a close-up of the color work at the neck. Now that's taken under lamplight, and you can see those cats came out a little dark. In daylight they look fine, but you see at the very top there's that lighter lavender. Yeah, I wish I'd done the cats in that lighter lavender. I didn't because my thought at the time was, these are supposed to be black cats. It's called Superstition. They should be darker. Who knows what I was thinking? They're purple, man. But at any rate, it's a very pretty sweater, and you can see a picture of me wearing it full length. And I just happened that day to have the perfect skirt with it, which is my Celestial fabric skirt that's purple. Seriously, it looks like I planned this. Good. No problem there. I look really happy in the second picture because I am, because it's such a good fit. It's so comfortable and warm. It's just a lovely, lovely sweater. And the link is in the show notes if you want all the information from my Ravelry page about any mods I made. Because I did. This is Bad Wolf Girl Knits, one of her patterns, and she tends to do color work way down the body, and I don't. I like the color work to end just before the divide for the sleeves. These are top down. And so I always modify her stuff, but I'm really, really fond of her patterns. She does a lot of very cool graphic design in these sweaters. So there I am looking mighty happy. I'm really happy because this sweater was turning into one of those projects that sits in your whip pile and you don't work on it and you know you're really close to finish, but you keep looking at it going, not now, not now. I have this other project that's hotter or more interesting to me. And I dread that because if I do that, I won't come back to the sweater for like a year. And I really want this sweater. And I like it because even though thematically it's kind of a Halloween sweater, it's also the right colors to go with a lot of my clothes, and it's right for this time of year. And that might be the advantage that the cats don't kind of jump out at you. People don't realize they're looking at sort of a Halloween pattern there. At any rate, it's finished and I'm deeply happy with it. In progress, well, the stash toss. Of course, I'm also happy because that added, I forget how many skeins to the out number on the stash toss, which means the current number is 38 skeins in and 92 skeins out. And today is January 1st, so I realize the current number is actually 0 in and 0 out. So we have now restarted the counter. The exciting thing there is that actually means, let me do some math here. So the net number of skeins in or out is 54 out of the stash. That's a lot of skeins, but it isn't enough, but it's a lot. It definitely cleared up space. I'm sitting in my study realizing the whole point of the stash toss was to clear out stuff in this study. It was a rousing success in that respect, and yet I'm still crowded in here, but I now have more room. Of course, part of the illusion there is I got rid of all the stuff that was gathered for CFR 2023, which was, oh my gosh, I couldn't turn around twice in this room at that point. But there was a huge success because essentially I emptied out a lot of yarn and cleared out space for myself, which I promptly filled in by moving yarn in that was stored in other bins. And so really, if you want to see the difference, you have to go to my walk-in closet where I am now done 155-liter bin. In other words, it's out of there, and so now it's under the bed holding sweaters. But we'll come down to that when I get down to the blather, because I had a great Romual and did some interesting things. All right. Meanwhile, the Romual sweater, I really only picked it up yesterday, well, a couple days ago, for the first time this whole break, but that's very satisfying because I got other things done. I thought I was going to sit around and knit this whole time. I barely knitted, so I'm extremely pleased, frankly, to just have finished one of the Evolution 23 socks, and you can see a picture of it in all its glory. I think I reported on that last episode, and I'm well down the foot of the top-down second sock of the Evolution 23 socks, so I'm deeply happy to have that going so well. I have so many socks right now. I'm debating, how many more do I want to knit? But socks are just one of those things. But there are other possible projects that I will eventually come back to, whether in this episode or another one, that I may put the socks aside and work on, say, colorwork mittens or something interesting like that. But meanwhile, the stash toss went extremely well. The Romual sweater made progress. I'm now working my way down the body and the arms at the same time, because I'm changing colors and experimenting with mixing colors and such, and I want the arms to match the body. In my experience, that works better. But Gemma, how do you do that? You have 3 sets of the same size needles, and you got 1 set in each arm and 1 set in the tube of the body, and you use hair bands to hold those babies shut so the stitches don't jump off the needles. And you do 3 rows at a time, depending on how much yarn you have, on each thing to make sure you're keeping up. It sounds very onerous. It's actually not that bad. You think it's going to be horrible. One of the things about it is you feel like, wow, this sweater is taking forever. And then you realize it's not. But you're doing everything all together, all at once. So it's one of these experiences, I say, with the history of my previous Romual sweaters behind me, where you feel like, oh, heavens, this thing will never be finished. And then you blink, and you're at the bottom, and you're at the bottom of both arms and the body at the same time. So it is pretty remarkable when you get that far. I say this so that I can take heart. There is a picture of the completed Evolution 23 sock, and I do top-down socks. And as you can see, I'm having a really good time there. I'm on the 1.5 US needles there. And it's working out really nicely with the striping in this particular yarn. I have suspected I've had blotchy stripes from various yarn dyers because I knit on bigger needles too loosely. And I just began to tighten up my socks, and I like it. At the same time, I was wearing a pair of socks that I think I finished in 2019, and it was Pagewood Farms. I don't even know if they're still producing in their, I think the yarn is called Yukon. And that thing felted. And the thing is, fits me great. The felting worked out fine. So I have a feeling that is why I stayed with US 2 knitting needles for so long, is that sense of they can felt a little bit and still be okay. In the meantime, I have done the occasional row on the 4th sock yarn cowl from CFR 23. I don't have it in the show notes, but really I'm adding to both number 3 and number 4. Number 1 is next to my bed, along with the Vineyard cowl, because they're both great at night. The Vineyard doesn't make my neck itch, so I have a feeling that cowl number 1 may eventually come back and be recycled to a charity, because the Vineyard is replacing it by being my bedtime cowl. That silk against the neck is really nice. My neck gets itchy sometimes with the wool and nylon fiber. Sometimes, not always. So anyway, so meanwhile, I have number 3 and number 4, because number 2 is finished and I wear it outdoors a lot. Number 3 and number 4 are on my table here as I speak. And I just periodically, when I have nothing else available, will just crochet on a row. They are spectacularly beautiful. And I also have in the show notes the list of the various books I've used for the color work I've been doing lately on sweaters, which means the Llama Love sweater and the Superstition, and also now the Romeo. And finally, the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery. Haven't touched it, really am getting the hankering to do it. I think I need to get through the sweater work first. Dizzy Blondes I have not been spinning. That's another thing I want to get back to, but meanwhile, you may notice in the show notes I have done a little bit of tidying and reorganizing. At the end of the show notes, since like a month before CFR 23, I had a list of my favorite resources, and these are the dyers I love, the LYSs that I love, and also all the people who supported us in the goodie bags. It was getting a bit heavy to have all that at the end, and also Minerva gets the last word, but she didn't. I had the favorite resources list there. So what I did was I transferred all of those guys to their own thread on the Ravelry group for the podcast. So now you will see my favorite resources comes right after the knitting and the spinning and the crocheting. And it says the entire list can be found right here. It's a link to take you over to that list. Now, what I think is going to happen here is when I recommend anybody who's not on that list, they will probably get added to that list. Also, inside the list, I did a little reorganization because I realized I had Cutiful Yarns, who I'm real fond of now, let me tell you, after doing those socks. I had them listed at the bottom of the list. I wanted to kind of make them visible, and it was kind of stupid. I put them at the bottom of the list because, like, oh, well, everybody notices the last thing. That didn't look right to me. So I did reorganize my favorite resources over on Ravelry to move Cutiful Yarns into the section called Dyers, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So anyway, you can click on that link and it will take you over to Ravelry, and you will find the thread of all the links of the people who I like and who have been supporting us through CFR. Okay, which means it's time for a strategy. This is an easy one. It's the last of the holiday strategies, and it is brace yourself for the re-entry, which by the time you hear this, you will probably have been back to work for a few days. But when you take a significant amount of time off, re-entry is very dangerous. When people take a grand trip, for example, they take a week off and they go to the Bahamas or Fiji or Maui or wherever, they come back and the real world just hurts. I say this, I'm remembering painfully coming back from Fiji and also coming back from Hawaii many years ago. And I remember coming back from Hawaii, I thought, why do I even have this job? I was working this very grinding job at a children's agency, and I was treated reasonably well in those days. Children's agencies now are like a living Hades, and I wouldn't recommend people train in them. Back in my day, they were where most of us got our training, but they've become a business model, not a patient model, and it's kind of heartless. But back in those days, they were still a grind. We were just treated a lot better. And I still remember sitting at my desk and going, no, I have to quit. And we lost a lot of people. That was the job where I first began to notice, even with a pretty good management, people would go away for a week and they'd do this dream trip. And then they'd come back, they'd last a week, and they'd quit. Re-entry, the research shows, is a dangerous time. That you've just been in fairy tale land for a while, And you come back and it's like running face first into a brick wall in a lot of cases. So you really have to be prepared for that it is hard to go back to work after you've had a long period of time off. And of course, many of us for the holidays, did we get enough rest, or were we chasing the kids around or the guests around and cooking nonstop, etc.? So our holidays needed to be restful, and if they weren't, re-entry ain't going to make that better. I have to tell you, I'm having a good re-entry because in my world, you always work the day before. So tomorrow I have my patients, but I only have 4. And I know one of them, we're going to mutually part ways and we'll both be good with that. So that's an easy enough session. And the other 3 are just fine. But, today I had to review my case notes and prep the notes for tomorrow. And I had to text all of them to make sure they're going to show. And yes, I did take a crisis call today and had to do the notes for that. But, it's not a big deal, actually. Everybody is safe as far as I know, and it's all documented. But it was a nice way to do re-entry. Weirdly enough, working a little today kind of started easing me back into that world. And tomorrow I don't have a full day. And I recommend this to you. I would say, the day before you go back is no time to say, it's one last day, I'm going to party hard. Instead, you need to say, this is a transition day, and I'm going to try to start thinking about what I can do to get a bit of a head start for tomorrow. And if you can make your first day kind of low-key and easy on the meetings and all that, that's what you want to do. At the same time, it's a good time to take stock of where you are, like how you feel about this job, and if you think you're going to stay committed to it for another year. That's not an easy decision. And again, you have to remember, you have a re-entry bias where you're feeling like, oh no, a bit overwhelmed because you've had all this time off. There isn't an easy formula here. I think you have to look at it in terms of easing in and just being aware that you have to take it as slowly as you can manage. If you have a fast-paced job, or a job like mine that is not particularly fast-paced but can involve a lot of unexpected twists and turns, you really need to have the transition day where you're reading stuff, you're preparing stuff. And if you say, but Gemma, today is January 1st, it was supposed to be a day off, you're not using your time off appropriately, what I would tell you is, yeah, I did. I traded time. I worked on some stuff today, so tomorrow I have to use less time to deal with things. So tomorrow, to be honest, I am imagining, unless my crisis person decides to show, which I offered them one of my sessions, I'm imagining that I'm going to do about 4.5 to 5 solid hours of work tomorrow. And in the meantime, I have a few projects that I hope to finish up from the holidays, but we'll see how that goes. But what I'm telling you is the last holiday strategy is brace for re-entry. And also, while you're doing that, you might want to think about the good side of that. Like, if you have kids, they're going back to school. You're going to get a little slower pace while they're back at school. No, my kid doesn't go back for another week. Ugh. They get so much time off in California. I don't know how they justify it. But at any rate, things should slow down a bit tomorrow if your kids are going back. And that's part of it as well. And, you get to sort of brace yourself, look at your house and say, now what do I want to do with that? And what kind of things do I need to kind of fix and repair? And I'll get to more of that, happily. This is all good news. Down in the blather. Meanwhile, fluffy books, nothing new. I haven't even watched Sister Boniface. I have her listed there, Sister Boniface on Netflix. But I actually haven't been watching TV. I've been listening to books I've already told you about, which is the Countess of Harley series by Diane, with 2 N's, Freeman. And I've just been listening to them over again. I started listening to them at night, because at night I was listening to Maria Grace's series of Jane Austen's Dragon books, which are just a trip if you're an English professor or a former English professor. But even those were getting a little tiresome, even though there's like 12 of them or 13 of them. And I thought, oh, I'll listen to these endlessly. No. So I started listening to the Countess of Harley books and realizing these are much better than I remember. I sort of went through them thinking, oh, this is kind of a one-off thing by a new writer. And this time around I'm going, no, these are actually pretty well plotted and very enjoyable. So, I'm not doing anything new there, is what I'm really telling you. I am interested in the fact that there is a course that keeps coming up on my social media where they take a subscription from you to play these 15-minute summaries of major self-improvement books. And I could care less about that. But I'm looking at their book list and saying, these would be good to read. Now, most self-improvement books for me, they're maybe an hour read because they're so full of fluff and padding. So I can understand that temptation to just listen to summaries. But you never know. I had read The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People years ago, got nothing out of it, and was redirected to it by a management consultant and read it and got 2 chapters out of it that were life-changing for me. So I'm thinking that may be my next book list. I may listen to them rather than read them, because that's a good way for me to get through those types of books, nonfiction and self-help kind of fluffy. So we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, let's go into something I really like. It is the Rise Egg Bite Maker. You can see a few pictures of it. There's an action shot where it's sitting on the counter next to 2 rather deflated-looking egg bites. What is this? This is an interesting little guy. And I suspect you could hack this and use it in various ways. But what they're using it for is they give you these 6 silicone cups, and you think they're really tiny. What you learn is you blender those guys together. I'm thinking, what was it? A pinch of salt, a pinch of pepper, 4 eggs, and I believe it was a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of cottage cheese. I'll come back to it one of these days. These things are really bland. Now, the interesting thing about this egg bite maker, as its Fran pointed out, is you can get the same thing if you buy silicone egg bite molds and use them in your Instant Pot. But the difference is mine came out rather drippy. She likes them because they don't brown. But she does point out, I think, if I understood her correctly, she's using a lid over the egg bite mold, which I wasn't. And so that probably fends off that drippiness. I think in either case, you have to keep in mind that the heavy ingredients go into the cup first, and then you pour the egg batter on top of it. And if I remember correctly, I think I've just said this, it's 4 eggs to 2 tablespoons of cottage cheese. And you have to be generous with the seasonings. The seasonings just disappeared into the flavor for some reason. I think because I was seasoning as though I was using 1 egg, not 4. This will make about 12 egg bites in the Rise Egg Bite Maker, and your mileage may vary if you're using the Instant Pot. Now, there's only 6 cups in the Rise, so this makes 2 batches, is what I'm telling you. So why even bother with this? Well, first of all, it saves you Starbucks money. You're not going to Starbucks and spending on egg bites, which are idiotically expensive. Second thing is you're not getting starch in your egg bites, which Starbucks has. Third thing, you can make a bunch of these, put them in the fridge. I would cover them maybe with some tin foil or something. Maybe you can freeze them. I haven't tried it yet. These are like little teeny tiny soufflés. And they're very satisfying and very filling with the right ingredients in them. So, if you make up bacon and you make an extra piece or 2 and you can stick it in the fridge, chop it up, and just sprinkle that in for these guys later when you make them. To my surprise, the reason this egg bite maker worked so well was the boys were using the kitchen to cook one day, and I hadn't had lunch. And I realized that I could dash in, blender the eggs and cottage cheese, throw in salt and pepper and some shredded cheese, and then I could just do this and be out of their way. That I could just throw this together in a minute, put it in the egg bite maker, and walk away for 12 minutes. Now, I have to tell you the weird thing about the egg bite maker, which I've rather grown to love. What you're doing is you're filling the bottom with water, half cup, and then they tell you 2 egg bite size cups. I measured it, it's half a cup. And so then you put the egg bite molds with their solution in the water, and the water just steams away. This thing heats up and the water evaporates, and then you've got these soufflés. But what's so funny, I thought, why are they calling it Rise? And I thought, well, rise in the morning, sunrise. No. What happens is when the little egg bites puff up, they make the lid lift, and that means you get more evaporation. But it's really quite nice that you can do this on the side of the kitchen, and you're not turning on the stove, and you're not heating up the kitchen or anything like that. It's just a very little compact thing that works happily on its own. I haven't tried halving the recipe, but I think that would work just great. 2 eggs and a tablespoon of cottage cheese, and you'd get 6 egg bites. I seem to be able to eat about 2 to 3, and I feel pretty full. So this thing works. Now, I sound like I'm in put a lid on it, so let's go to put a lid on it. Well, I mentioned last episode that I made a sort of all-day Romule soup, and I must say I really like this. This is really a broccoli cheddar soup, and it's done in keto. To my horror, I already had a recipe for that, and frankly, mine is better. I don't use my slow cooker very often, but I have to tell you the great advantage of the slow cooker is the volume. So I have one of those big old clunky ones under the counter, and I pulled it out, and in it I put a chopped onion that I had previously fried in butter, because whenever you make soup, I like that fresh fried onion flavor in it, to be honest. And then I added all my leftover turkey bone broth from Thanksgiving. I am going to miss that stuff. The flavor in that stuff was wonderful. I also put in 5 heads of broccoli that I had chopped up. And you're going to blend these eventually, so you can decide how finely you want to chop them. And let's see what else I had. A half cup of almond flour, salt and pepper to taste, a cup of heavy cream, and about 3 cups of shredded cheddar. I think I had a lot more than that. So this is how that works. I fried the chopped onion in butter, just in a separate skillet. And I turned the slow cooker on to high while I was doing that, so I wanted the slow cooker to warm up. And then I put the onion in the slow cooker and I poured in the broth, about a quart of it. And then I added the broccoli. And I left it on high for about 10 minutes because I wanted to really warm up the ceramic pot inside the slow cooker. And then I turned it to low and I left it overnight because I wanted the broccoli to get soft. And that worked just fine. The next morning I got up and I threw in the flour, and I used almond flour, not cornstarch or wheat flour because I am keto. And I stirred the flour in well, and I put the cream in, and I put my seasonings. I just used salt and pepper. Then I stuck my immersion blender in that baby and went to town and blended it as thoroughly as I could. After I had a good blend, I added a lot of shredded cheese. How much? Well, I say 3 cups. I think it was probably substantially more than that. I had these 2 bricks of cheese. One of them I got for Christmas from my husband, and it was a smoked cheddar, and the other was a strong cheddar from the local grocery. And I just shredded those puppies up and put it in there and just stirred it to melt while the cooker was on low. And at that point, when the cheese is melted, you turn it to warm because you don't want to scorch things on the bottom. The cheese will sink if it's there long enough, and you'll start scorching it, so don't do that. And then you just put your cooker on warm. And you let it sit there all day with a lid on it. And that means you have this all-day soup. And there's a picture of it sitting in one of my old ceramic mugs. And it was very, very good. And this does not change the fact that I'm still catching you up on the Plum Deluxe Advent Calendar. Well, first of all, it ended officially on Christmas. I wasn't feeling well and had lost my sense of smell and taste due to the COVID problem. So I did delay. And I finally did finish the calendar, I think, on the 30th of December. And so I will keep giving you my reviews as we go. But I have to tell you overall, the Plum Deluxe Advent Calendar, I got the non-caffeinated one. It was a tremendous success. I look forward to getting it next year. It was just this pleasant surprise every day. So I'm up to, I think, day 8 and 9. Day 8 was fig lemon herbal. And it was good. And you can see it's green rooibos. I'm not quite sure what that is. It's a rooibos, but I don't know why it's green. And apple and pistachio, which, again, they're very nutty over at Plum Deluxe. I like to add nuts. Lemon peel fig, and then essences of lemon and fig. This came across with a nice citrus fragrance, and it felt great on my throat after I had been seeing patients and talking to people. This is a few weeks back now. This is just a nice one. This is just great. I wouldn't jump out of my skin for it and say, gee, I hope they add it to the regular lineup. But I would be really happy to drink it again. It really was quite wonderful. And since I started talking about things that help my throat, I did try their Rejuvenation Blend Herbal Tea. You can see I had an ounce packet of it. And this is very strongly ginger without drowning you in ginger. But it starts with ginger root, then there's lemon peel. And it goes down, there's some apple pieces, and there's licorice in it. This is clearly meant to be a restorative for your throat And this is great. I have to tell you, rejuvenation tea, I definitely want to keep this stuff around for when I'm not feeling well. It's also a nice good night tea because I talk all day with patients, and it's one of these things that's just very soothing. So this is Rejuvenation Blend Herbal from Plum Deluxe, and I highly recommend it. And then Day 9. Day 9, of course, is one of my favorites, the Tranquil Peach Herbal. Now, I've been drinking it cold all summer, as you know, with no sweetener in it. Because it came in this package, I drank it hot. Whoa, didn't see that coming. It's great. This stuff, I had no idea was this good hot. I've never been a fan of hot peach tea, but this one really worked. Now, it does need a hint of sweetener when it's hot. In its cold form, I could drink it all summer, as you found out, and be very, very happy. So we've got 3 good ones from Plum Deluxe, 2 from the Advent Calendar, the Fig Lemon Herbal, which I do recommend, and the Tranquil Peach Herbal, which I recommend. And then if you're looking for something nice on your throat that's just soothing and a little bit lively, I would go for Rejuvenation Blend Herbal. Very, very good stuff. One of those ones you want to have on hand. Whew, let's get down to the blather. Well, so Romeo, I realized this year, and my husband and I were talking about it a bit, that this was a very peaceful year. That 2022 was very hard on us. We had my husband with the exploding eyeball stuff. And 2023, I think my whole goal was to not have 2022 repeat itself, let alone the horror of 2020. And so this year I look back and we didn't do a whole lot, but it's just been quiet. And I'm so grateful for that quiet, I can hardly tell you. So Romeo followed through with that I was on Amazon, round about Thanksgiving through Black Friday and so on. And I kept seeing all these amazing deals on things to improve the house. And Joanne had a bunch of sales as well. And so I started thinking about, I want to clean up, I want to improve things. I had planned to do the typical stuff, clean down the bathrooms and, scrub out the cat box. And I got to almost none of that. But what I did instead made me extremely happy. Basically, I committed to getting into a major house project every day. And it worked really well. And these are somewhat out of order to the way you may have seen them if you saw my social media about them. But you can see the daily house projects. I have a picture of a cutting board and a rotary cutter. And if you look really carefully, you will see a quilter's edge. Quilter's edge is really important because it is a very heavy, hard plastic ruler. And it has a lot of markings for different sizes and dimensions and measurements. So pretty much with a quilter's edge, you can cut your fabric to any width or length you want. And of course, the cutting board there is a cutting board that can withstand the blade of a rotary cutter, because that's what we use here in quilting land. So what did I do? I took all my leftover scraps from the skirts I made this year and cut them into 2.5-inch wide stripes to be used in quilting. And as I was doing this, I also started emptying the drawers of my dresser, which was go into a drawer each day and totally empty it onto the ground in front of the drawer, and then pick up each piece of clothing, examine it, and put it in the donation box if I didn't want it. But a couple of things were made of flannel, like my pajama pants and the green plaid there. And I looked at them and said, I don't think I want to donate them. I think I want to cut them into strips for quilting because they're perfectly good flannel. So you can see that too, that I have part of a leg of one of my old pajama pants that wasn't fitting well, and I just cut it into the strips. And below that you will see, well, first of all, I want to point out that I got the equipment for this at Joann's, including the rotary cutter. The rotary cutter is a must. You don't want to do this with scissors, because the rotary cutter lets you lay the fabric flat. It lets you compress the fabric under the quilter's edge to hold it still. And then it lets you, it's like a pizza slicer, like a rotary pizza slicer. It lets you just cut a nice clean edge. Scissors are not going to achieve that very well. And it's much faster than scissors, okay? You got to play carefully because this thing has an incredibly sharp razor blade, that circular blade, but it's worth its weight in gold. And Joann's, of course, had sales, and so I got storage for half off, and you can see, I think that's 55 liters, that one bin. And you can see I'm filling it with strips of the fabric from my skirts. I thought I was going to finish this easily, a handful a day. No, I'm probably about a third of the way through it, a third close to a half, something like that. But the mess on my desk where I had piled all that leftover fabric is so reduced. The other thing that's wonderful was I just gave up and bought a big bin for it and said this is going to enable any quilting I want to do in 2024. And I'm getting rid of this fabric. I don't feel like I'm wasting it because I hate waste. And so I'm going to be working on this project for a while, but even in like the first 3 days, you can see I have probably a quarter to a third of that bin full of strips. Now I could compress them a lot, so I'm not worried about it. But if you're going to do this kind of thing, really get yourself a dedicated bin and get dedicated tools and do it right, because otherwise this is pretty hard on your nerves. And, you know, I'm on the floor on my hands and knees doing this every day, so I can only do it for about half an hour before everything starts hurting. But it has been so worthwhile to do it. Now, in the meantime, I told you I was emptying one drawer a day. Boy, was that satisfying. All my drawers now open and close. I know where my clothes are that I like to wear every day. It just worked great. But what did I do with those clothes? Well, first of all, I went online and said, where do you donate clothes? Because I thought, Goodwill? I don't even know where our local Goodwill is. Because I had been giving stuff to a homeless shelter. They relocated the shelter because they're opening a new building soon. I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. What I found was something I had forgotten about, and that is, all one word, givebackbox.com. This came out during the quarantine in the pandemic. It's a great idea. And what it is you take those boxes you got for Christmas, like boxes from Amazon, big boxes, cartons. There is a size limit, but it's pretty generous. Okay, you take those boxes and you fill them with things you want to donate. Now, Give Back Box, they want clothes. You can go to their website, which I keep repeating, givebackbox.com. I think they want clothes, but they don't want kitchen items. They may take shoes, I forget. I gave them a lot of soft clothes and some belts. But the nice thing, Give Back Box is giving this to the poor. It's not selling it to the poor as far as I can tell. And also they try to keep it out of landfills. So they are giving it to fabric recyclers. So I really like this. Now, the problem there is you go to Give Back Box and they say print out our label. And I believe you have to pay them a donation. One variant of givebackbox.com is planetaid.com. They're on the East Coast of the States. They have actual donation boxes. But also you can go to Planet Aid. They work with givebackbox.com and you pay them $20 and you print out a label and you take it to the United States Post Office and they will just accept it. They see it as prepaid. They've got some deal going. All right. But it turns out I did not use Planet Aid, but I do want you to know about it. But you say, well, what about Give Back Box? If Planet Aid has these pickup points, like these boxes that you can donate to, you know, in parking lots and whatnot, what about Give Back Box? Turns out a lot of retailers will take Give Back Box and they will pay for the postage. In my area, it is Kohl's, and that is Kohl's. Kohl's actually will accept boxes for Give Back Box and they will ship them. What does that mean? It means you go to givebackbox.com and here are various pickup points where you can just donate the box. But they ask you, fill the box, seal the box, try to cover up your name and address on the box, and then take it to the drop-off point, in this case Kohl's department stores. And when you go to their website, they have all these signs. Kohl's will take these. Kohl's, I believe, is a national chain in the States now, because I know they're in New Jersey and I'm on the other coast in California. Okay, so what do? You take it to Kohl's, but first you go to the website, givebackbox.com. You find the link where it says Kohl's accepts boxes, and you click on that link, and that will take you to a place where they ask you for your name and your address and an email, and they're going to use it. It's a good thing. And you give them that, and then they say, okay, next thing you do, seal your box, take it to any Kohl's, and they give you all the local Kohl's around you. So I took it to the Kohl's over in Valencia, and it was great. You go over to their returns department. They treat it like you're making a return. All right, now, when I went to click the link for Kohl's, it gives you the Kohl's website, and it says, what is the purpose of your return? And there's a pull-down menu, and it only says one thing, donation. So you click on donation, give it the information. They immediately send you an email with a QR code. So you take that with you, and you take your box. You go to the returns counter at Kohl's. You just give it to them like it's a normal return, and you show them the QR code. They scan it. Now, I talked to the Kohl's person because I was really interested in what they know about this. They know nothing about it. As far as the Kohl's representative knew, the woman standing behind returns, who was a really nice young woman, all she knew was it was a return, and because I had a QR code, it was already settled. That all she had to do was scan the code, print out a label, put the label on the box, and take the box, and we were done. So this could not have been easier. You click on the link at givebackbox.com, you go to the Kohl's link there, you give them some easy information, you get a QR code in an email, and you drop off your box and let them scan the QR code. Now the interesting thing is the label that gets printed out, because I talked to everybody, so I asked to look at it, it says givebackbox.com. So there's somebody in the back in Kohl's who understands that when it says Give Back Box, they are putting it in a different pile and it is being sent to Give Back Box, and Kohl's is picking up the cost. This is a kind of silent charity on Kohl's part. But wait, there's more. They gave me a coupon on the spot for 20% off anything in the store for a 6-day period. So I've taken 4 boxes in, and what do I do with that? I don't shop at Kohl's, or I never have. Well, one thing, for the first time in my life, I shopped at Kohl's. I have felt very grateful to them for what they were doing. Now, I walked down this aisle, and there were all these candles, and they were discounted. They were trying to get rid of them. You know what I'm going to do. So I bought some of the candles. They had expensive Yankee Candle, which, no, too much money. But there were less expensive candles, like these perfectly decent jar candles, probably about 8 ounces. And they were selling them for $9. So, yeah, I got 20% off. I really was happy about that. And then I got a big tin of catnip for Minerva, who was very, very happy about that. So what am I going to tell you? The Kohl's thing, a win-win. Go to givebackbox.com and you can work it out like I did. You can see they immediately email you. Once it's been scanned, you get an email that says, okay, we got it. And now what's going to happen next is when it is shipped from Kohl's to Give Back Box, they will email me again for each box saying, we got your box. And then they help you get a receipt for tax purposes, which is really, really nice. So this is a nice system, and it's really not expensive. It's a way to get rid of all those boxes you got at Christmas. They'll take just about any size box. And since it's just free, you're just throwing your clothes in and handing it over to Kohl's. I use just about any size box. At this point, I have 6 rather large boxes of clothing that I have said goodbye to. And I have to say that was satisfying in itself. That what happened was my closet and my drawers got a lot cleaner. I was shocked after purging them back in the quarantine 3 years ago, and I don't really think I've been buying new clothes. What happened was now I'm looking at them and saying, here's the stuff I no longer wear because I work from home. And frankly, I expect to work from home for the rest of my probably limited time left as a psychologist. So this is really, really a nice solution. And by the way, I have to tell you, and I know some of you are going to faint, so you might need to sit down. But I have to tell you, one of the things I did was I went through my sweaters, my knitted goods, all my knitted neckwear, because I'm big on scarves and infinity scarves. And I went through those, and I gave a lot of those away. I was surprised. I have a few sweaters, jumpers for you Brits, that I simply, and Aussies, that I simply was not wearing, that I made. They're beautiful, they're perfectly made, and I'm not using them. And I said, well, you know, it's time to pass these on. You kind of hear these little yarny screams when you put them in the box because you have a whole lot invested in them. You have all those memories of doing them. Some of them were quarantine knitting, and that was really what moved me to start making sweaters. And you know what happened? I went into my sweater bins. I have 2 big 50-liter sweater bins. I went into them, and I had room to put in my new sweaters. In other words, you know, when they're out of sight, you're not sitting around going, oh, where is that? Where is that? Really, glad to see them go. They were just taking up space that I wanted to use for other things. So I really encourage you to explore givebackbox.com and planetaid.com. You don't necessarily have to make a cash donation. If you're in the right place, the right time, you can just take it to a drop-off point. And I think I've mentioned, yes, that I'm cutting stripes for quilts, but I started doing something else, and that is in my closet on the floor, I had a pile of outgrown t-shirts, my son's and my own. They were just sitting there because I wanted to cut them up for making quilts, and so I did. I got another storage unit from Joann's. Making a t-shirt quilt is one of the easiest, most satisfying things you can do, but like all quilting, it takes time and procedure. Okay, and it starts with, and that's all I'm going to say right now, it starts with you take a t-shirt and you cut it apart. You can cut the sleeves off if you want. For my long sleeve shirts, I definitely did that, but you don't have to. What you do, you flatten your nice t-shirt on the ground and you cut up the sides on each side. You go from the hem right up to the armpit and then out across till you get to the end of the sleeve. And then you go from the neckline down the side seam that's above your shoulder. It's on your shoulder bones. You go down that and then down the sleeves. What are you really doing? You're cutting the front apart from the back at the sides. And you can use both the front and the back if you want to. On some of my t-shirt quilts, I have done that because the back had decoration that I wanted to save too. But the important thing is I cut the shirts, I separated the sleeves and the front from the back, and I just stuck them in one of those same bins that I'm using for the strips from my leftover skirt fabric. This is a separate bin though. I'm keeping the t-shirts separate. And the idea is I don't want these t-shirts to get thrown out. They have memories. They have some really cool insignia on them. But I don't want to wear them. They're just sitting around doing nothing. And so now is the time to basically upcycle them. You can do a number of things with them. I will tell you the basic thing. You take the t-shirt and you are going to put fusible interfacing on it, on the back of it. You're going to iron it onto fusible interfacing. And that is going to stiffen it. And then you're going to cut it to the size you want. And you can do a number of things with it. Number one, you could just make pillows out of each shirt. And that in itself would be a lot of fun. But you can also save them up and make them all a fairly regular size and then make a t-shirt quilt out of it, which is really the direction I'm going. I don't have enough by any means. It takes a lot of t-shirts to make a bed quilt. The other thing you should know is I don't quilt these, I tie them. That is, I take a heavy embroidery needle with yarn in it and I run it through each corner and tie knots there instead of using a quilting stitch through it. If you want to, you can. Particularly if you have a quilting sewing machine, especially a free arm. That would be easy. Just make it like you'd make any other quilt and let the machine just free quilt it. Whatever you want to do. But I just tie these. I don't put a lot of work into these, and yet they're durable and they're great. A lot of memories in those babies. Okay, the next project was our pathway. You can see it in the picture. We have a cement pathway. That is the least overgrown part you're looking at. It is hard to walk on that thing, and off the side of it is pretty much mud. So I bought planking walkways, just 2 pieces of them, because I should have measured it, but I didn't. And I just thought, I'm going to try it out, and if I like it, I like it. I also bought, and you can't see them in that, pins, like long stakes with a hook at the end to hold them down. So I put in 18 feet of that and said, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do, because I am concerned that it is hard to get to the front door on that concrete pathway because it's so overgrown, and we're afraid if we cut it back too much, we'll kill the actual plants. So rather than do that, we're expanding the pathway. I have solar lights. I cannot figure out where I put them, but when I find them, they are going on the outer edge of that because I'm going to add 2 more of those pathways, at least I believe. And I'm going to put solar lights, and hopefully we're just going to renovate that a bit so we have a walkway there that is safe to walk on at night and is lighted. That was part of it. And then we have a garage camera, a ring. I didn't get to it. It is on the list of things to do, but we're looking at having an electrician come in and work on our spotlights above the garage, and so when he comes in, we may ask him to install it right under the lights. Whew! And I didn't put in, I think I might have said it last week, of course, we hung the insulated curtain over our leaky back door. And so that was very nice too. Yes, it was last week. And I put up the puck lights. So the house is looking pretty cool these days. Meanwhile, the pup date. Everybody's good. I worked on having Queenie indoors. Queenie is a perpetual motion machine, but she is a great dog. I feel a little bad. This is a dog that should have gone to a young person who really wants to train because Queenie wants a job. At the same time, Queenie isn't a German Shepherd. Blankets and her ilk, they just live to please you. Queenie lives to be active. She's got a strong herding instinct. And so when you bring her in the house, she means well, but she is, well, how can I say it? There is no off switch. So I spent time with her trying to get her to just be in my back bedroom suite with me and learn to calm down. She did pretty well. It's a work in progress. You can see a picture of her grinning at me. She almost never sits still. Like, you have to realize that's a little blurry because it's amazing that I even captured her, because Queenie is always on the go. But she's had some good practice. And of course, Captain keeps trying to tell us we don't need another dog in the house. She'll do just fine. But really, we want Queenie to be a house dog. It just takes a little practice, and she does tend to bring me things. So meanwhile, I haven't done much of anything else, except I am getting rid of the holiday boxes, but I am not cutting them apart. I am actually loading them up with leftovers and taking them for donations, and it really, really makes a difference. Also, I have to give kudos to the beloved son, because he took the Christmas tree down because Minerva kept eating the needles, and he wanted to give her her freedom, and I'm really, really grateful to him, because it just sort of came and went quickly. And usually I like the Christmas tree hanging around, but this year, no, we have too many other uses for that floor, because I use it to cut out my skirts, and my boys are using it for their human-sized dog beds. Project Cookbook, I did a little bit. I included any recipe that I've described here, including the soup and the egg bites. What I didn't mention was Ketorade. I think next week I'm going to come back and give you the Ketorade recipe, although you can Google the word and you will go right to several very good recipes for it. Ketorade is Gatorade for those of us who don't want to drink weird chemicals and pay a fortune. And this stuff, you want to always have this in the fridge. This is good after a workout. This is good if you're dehydrating. I get up in the morning kind of dry, and I drink probably a cup of this at least. And I really, really like it. So I'll try to give you the Ketorade next week if I remember. I did give it in a previous episode, though. Nothing going on in the garden except I'm using all my tea leaves to mulch things, which makes me happy. On the calendar, Yarnopoly and Second Saturday Stitchers. They are meeting up usually on the second Saturday of each month. I think Yarnopoly may be going to a Sunday for their next meeting. I think it's like January 14th. Okay, but they're there. They have Facebook pages. There's also a meeting at the Joanne Darcy Library in Canyon Country here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Meanwhile, CFR10 will be at the Courtyard by Marriott in Valencia on September 28th, 2024. And yes, it's true, Romule 2024 will be December 21st, which is a Saturday, through January 1st, which is like a Wednesday. So I'm already saving up those days, because you betcha I'm taking my Romule off. My guess is that I will probably do Romule from something like the 25th through the 2nd. We will see. Or through the 1st. We will see. Because this is a particularly long Romule, because Christmas and New Year's are now falling on Wednesdays due to the leap year. Goody goody. I'll work it out when it happens. Meanwhile, Minerva gets the last word. There she is. And the last word is, had a little too much catnip and life is groovy. Now, I learned with the catnip to sprinkle it on that board. You can see she's lying on it in the first picture. It's a scratching board, cardboard from Walmart. And if you put it on that board and rub it in, she will leave wherever she is and go to it. And then she will basically sleep on it and kiss it and lick it and claw it and be very, very happy for hours. And then you can see a picture of her after she did that. She is in my lap, and you can tell I look goofy because there's a sort of warp filter on that picture, but Minerva just looks high as a kite because she is. So I'm afraid I have spent the last few days introducing my cat to hallucinogenic cat drugs, and she is pretty happy about it. So the last word is, hey man, it was a great Romule, and I'm feeling groovy. So on that happy note, boy, am I here to tell you, get all your immunizations, man. Wear your mask if you're in a crowd. I know I have lived the truth of it, my friends. But also keep the Ketorade on hand. Don't be afraid of the big bad Paxlovid. Just take care of yourself. We are a community. When we are protecting ourselves, we are protecting others. When we protect others from our illnesses, we are protecting ourselves through the community. So you guys need to take care of yourselves, because we're going into the darker times of the year. Welcome to January. And in the meantime, I'm saying all these nice things. Stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.